Hello everyone. So we've had another year of the Game Awards. I think most people generally have a bit of a here nor there attitude towards the show itself, and I can definitely see why. Previous shows I don't think have been particularly spectacle. But for what it is, I'm kind of happy that there is something that celebrates games in this fashion, even if a large proportion of the awards aren't really celebrated and just kind of pushed to the side in favour of trailers. Which kind of makes this video a little bit ironic because with the Game Awards comes a ton of game announcements or sort of game viewings or gameplay trailers that maybe we didn't see before. I want to talk about a few of the things that I found really interesting and really I'm looking forward to in 2023. So I'm not going to delve too much into kind of the reasoning behind this. It's completely off the cuff, hence the sort of really low-key environment. There'll probably be a little bit of editing here and there just to show off a bit of what I'm talking about, but bar that, I kind of want to dive into what I found particularly interesting from the show. So I won't be covering everything here, but if the stuff you found interesting, just let me know down below, and I'll be sure to give it another look, because whilst I was watching the show, I was also doing work. It's my first year actually doing freelance journalism for the Game Awards and writing news pieces as they come out, so my priorities were split depending on what came up. So there's a few things that I was writing about that maybe I have a bit more interest in now because I've written about them. But of course that comes with the territory of knowing a bit more about anything really. But let's not sort of dwell on it and let's just jump into it really. I'm kind of going in order here of the stuff that I saw. I suppose the main thing that I initially saw in terms of trailer structure was the new Hellboy game, which is being developed by Upstream Arcade. I am interested in this for relatively one reason, because Hellboy isn't a character that I have much affinity for. I've never seen any of the movies, so I'm not too nostalgic for that character. But Upstream Arcade, on the other hand, I've huge respect for and love them so much as a developer. The Midwest of Dead, which is kind of a roguelike with the big man himself, Ron Perlman. And it's a pretty decent roguelike style structure, not terribly difficult, which is fine for me because that genre outside of one or two games is not really my cup of tea to begin with. The new Hellboy game, as little as we saw of it, I'm pleasantly and reluctantly excited for it, because I think Upstream have a lot of credibility in my eyes, and they're completely underrated as a developer in my eyes as well. Maybe that's because I talk to people that maybe haven't played their games as much, but I think if you talk to any sort of Upstream Arcade fan, they'll probably tell you that their games are great. As you'd expect, I think, with most fans of any sort of property. But that's one game I'm really looking forward to. Whether the gameplay will be similar to West of Dead or be a completely different style of formula, it looks a bit more third person as opposed to the sort of the isometric top down we got from West of Dead, which should be interesting to take a look at. But yeah, that was the first trailer that really caught my eye, because I noticed the art style straight away as being very similar to West of Dead, and I thought, is this by those same developers? And it was, so that's great. Replaced is another one that came up during the show. I remember seeing this, I think it was 2 years ago now, at one of the E3s. It must have been, maybe it is 2 years ago. I'm trying to remember the year that E3 wasn't actually on. But I remember seeing it alongside Somerville, which released this year, and I still have yet to kind of delve into that game, but I remember being hyped for both of those games in particular because they kind of had a similar style aesthetic that I kind of like, kind of post-apocalyptic, side-scrolling angle, or at least isometric, drawn back at least. Similar sort of games like Limbo or Inside. This game is a bit more sort of pixely and side-scrolling, so it's not quite like Limbo or Inside, but it still has that same sort of style and vibe that I'm really into. It's difficult for me to describe what it is about the game that's particularly very interesting. I just know that I am interested to see where it goes. These sorts of games that kind of look like a la sort of Blade Runner 2049 or something like that are always stuff that I really enjoy and look forward to coming out, because they can generally, I can generally picture myself sitting down for an evening, lights off, maybe have the fire on, and like playing one of these games through at least, or getting a good way through it in one sitting, because they'll engross me into their worlds, and I'm hoping something like that happens this time around with Replaced. It's definitely one I'm really looking forward to. I think what they showed off was really fun as well, kind of gives a good look into how the game will run in certain elements, and that should always be interesting to see how it comes out on launch as well. But yeah, that was one I'm really looking forward to. I think I've talked to a few people that are kind of similar in that way as well, that they like the vibe of it, but still there's very little known about kind of how it'll run, or at least I haven't delved too much into it to see how it'll run. And I intend to kind of keep it that way, because generally when there's a game I'm interested in that's coming out, I will generally stay very far away from any form of media on it, which is surprising because my job is literally to cover games media, but I'll try my best not to have to delve into it unless it's something very big like Callisto Protocol, which it was impossible to avoid the sort of conversation around that. But Replaced might be something I don't think I'll have too much trouble with, and I'm looking forward to it coming out and seeing what it brings to the table. Hades 2, what can I say? I was so taken aback, but I was so surprised. As soon as I saw the Supergiant Games logo, I was already hooked, I was in, but then you hear that nice, lovely little rhythmic element from Darren Korb in the trailer, and I was like, what is this? This looks insane. And for the majority of the trailer, I thought, oh, this is amazing. This is going to be a new DLC for Hades. Not a new DLC, a whole new fucking game is what it is. Hades 2 just feels like it's taking the core formula of what made the original Hades so good and kind of adding on to it. New voice cast, new abilities, all that sort of good jazz that I'm looking forward to. It's already available to wishlist on Steam, and you know I am getting in on that early access as soon as it drops in 2023. The fact that it's coming so soon as well is amazing. I really hope that it does well, because Supergiant are a company that generally warm my heart every time I see them release a project, because I think they release some of the most interesting and sort of in-depth narrative experiences that I've had in a while, Hades particularly, and this is coming from someone that generally doesn't really like roguelikes. It's funny that West of Dead came up, because that's one of the other few roguelikes that I've actually played and enjoyed. I need to try stuff like Binding of Isaac and Dead Cells at some point, because I know they're heavily regarded, but the difficulty spike in those sorts of games has always kind of turned me off. But Hades is something that I just found myself putting hours upon hours into, both the PC version, the Xbox version, and the Switch version. The Switch and PC were great because you could have cross-play, or cross-progression, sorry, so you could just bring over your progression for the PC build, and it was great to bring on the go. Before obviously the invention of the Steam Deck, which I still don't have, so it's good that I have Hades on the Switch. But I really am looking forward to Hades 2. I can't actually express it. The whole trailer got me hyped. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was something I wanted to write about. Learning more about it just makes me even more excited for what Supergiant are doing. And with their proven track record and sort of their community feedback and the way in which they listen to that community is just everything I want in a developer, and they always seem like just really nice guys, especially from the No Clip documentary series that they did on them. Yeah, no, I can't say. I think this is my big takeaway from the show. It's the best game I think that was shown off, and it's the one I'm definitely most excited for. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Yeah, this is an interesting one. I mean, we all knew it was coming up when the show was before the show even started. We knew we were going to get some gameplay inside. It looks good, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a big fan of Jedi Fallen Order. I loved that when it came out. I remember playing that one Christmas just through to the end in I think 2 days or something. And even with the sort of difficult combat that would usually turn me off games, this game struck a good balance of kind of taking really good bits from, say, games like Uncharted, Titanfall, Dark Souls, and creating it into something that was just its own thing, and it wasn't too majorly difficult. You could enjoy it for what it was, but you could also have a good decent skill gap there as well, if you really wanted to. The second game, Jedi Survivor, I'm looking forward to seeing where they continue the story off. It's probably one of the best stories in Star Wars history since Disney's takeover, which doesn't say much, I don't think, but I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, Cameron Monaghan, I mean, when he was on stage at the Game Awards, I mean, you can just tell he loves the character of Cal Kestis, and I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing the returning cast. We saw so many great stories in the first game. I mean, we even have that amazing scene with Darth Vader at the end. I'm glad they didn't show him in the trailer. I hope we get something similar in this game. Maybe not with Darth Vader, but something a bit more like, oh my god, I can't believe we see that. But I'm so happy that this game might just take on its own little story. I think with Star Wars I found recently, I think outside of maybe The Mandalorian Season 1, there's been a lot of like TV shows from the Star Wars universe, Andor as well. Outside of those two shows, it's kind of been like, here's this show about a character, but here's all these other characters, you know, kind of coming in to make an appearance to kind of promote their spin-off show. And I am never a big fan of the idea that Star Wars is in a galaxy and everyone seems to bump into each other just randomly. So I'm hoping this game kind of does its own thing in the time period. I'm happy to see some new abilities and lightsaber fighting styles. I know was a new thing in that game as well. At least that's what the leaked Steam page said beforehand the show. But yeah, no, it should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing more of it before its inevitable release. And yeah, that's about it. Transformers Reactivate. There wasn't much shown about this. I know there was a Transformers game in the works. Some concept art got leaked a couple of days, or maybe it's a week ago now, by someone who worked on an unannounced Transformers game. I'm not sure if this is the same one, but that concept art got me kind of hyped for a new Transformers game. I'm a big Transformers fan. I grew up with sort of the Transformers Armada TV show, so not quite G1, but still a really good series of Transformers in my eyes. And I grew up with obviously the Michael Bay movies, and I've kind of kept up with the series intermittently. It's not something I'm actively going on my way to search up for, but it's something I kind of, when you see it, like your child brain just goes off and you're like, yes, Transformers. This looks a bit grittier. The trailer seems to kind of have a more of a post-apocalyptic vibe to it. I remember seeing one comment on the trailer saying Terminator meets Transformers, and I mean, that would be a really cool idea, and I'd love to see that. I haven't got much to say on this because there isn't much known about it. We haven't seen much of the actual Transformers either, bar like a couple of first-person hand shots of a Transformer. But I am going to be keeping an eye on this, and I hope it comes out good. The War and Fall for Cybertron games are games I really want to go back and play, although they're massively expensive because I think Activision discontinued them. So if you want to get a copy, it's like 40 quid. It's not the money I have at the moment to be like throwing away on a Transformers game. But yeah, I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. Hopefully it will live up to my high expectations. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. That is a mouthful of a name. The Warhammer games kind of tend to do that. But I'm not a huge Warhammer fan, and I say that not like I hate the Warhammer series. I just don't know a lot about it, and I don't really play it. I played a bit of Darktide there recently though, and the world has kind of sucked me in a little bit, I gotta admit. But everyone knows Space Marines, let's be honest. They're kind of the more pop culture-y element of Warhammer that people will know. And I mean, this game looks like it'll be fun. I imagine if it's multiplayer, it's going to be good crack as well to have a few mates jump on and play through. So I'm pleasantly looking forward to this. I don't have too much to say on it, but I just thought I'd kind of mention that in there, that is a game I am looking forward to. Crash Team Rumble. This is a good one because there was rumors of a Crash Bandicoot announcement at the Game Awards, I think a day or two beforehand. I know Toys for Bob put out a tweet kind of saying that you should expect something, and so I was before the show even started, I was kind of I had claimed that if there was a Crash Bandicoot thing, I wanted to write about it, so I had stuff drafted up, and I was expecting a platformer, but no, it's actually kind of a 4v4 multiplayer mode, and I'm interested. I really am. Crash Team Racing is great, so I mean, that the Toys for Bob team can really they can push outside the bounds of normal platformer for Crash Bandicoot to make a good game. Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time was great, Insane Trilogy Remaster was great, so I'm looking forward to seeing what Toys for Bob will bring up next. I don't think they've really missed yet on the Crash Bandicoot series, which is always great because I think as a Crash Bandicoot fan, we have had terrible titles in between Wrath of Cortex all the way up to the Insane Trilogy Remaster, so I'm looking forward to seeing what this is like. I'm not a huge brawler multiplayer person. I didn't play Multiverses. I'm not a big Tekken or Street Fighter fan, hence why I haven't mentioned either of them on this list. But I like Crash Bandicoot, so maybe I'm willing to give it a go. If all else fails, I mean, the Crash Bandicoot Crash Team Rumble thing will serve as a great way for me and my sister to kind of just mess about in the Xbox, because she's not a huge gamer, but I kind of like to kind of throw different bits of it. We're big in whenever she's over, we play a bit of Crash Team Racing, because I think we both have a little bit of nostalgia for that, because she grew up with the sort of PS1 era of games. So I'd like to at least have another game like that I can just be like, let's play this. But yeah, not much more known about it just yet. Seems like a kind of a fun mode, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like. Finally on the list of like the ones I want to really talk about is Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty. I haven't played Cyberpunk 2077 yet. I have it. I've yet to dive into it, and it's on my list. It's on that ever-growing backlog that I think everyone has, but I am looking forward to this DLC. The announcement was interesting. I think I was won over by the fact that Idris Elba is going to be in this DLC, and I know that's a really like basic sort of thing to say, but I mean, when Keanu Reeves was announced for Cyberpunk 2077, I was interested, but folks kind of threw me off that, and then I didn't want to pay full price for it either, because it wasn't a game I knew I'd get into, because as much as CD Projekt Red are like this beloved studio, I've never found myself really diving into their games extensively. The Witcher 3 is something I've tried many times to get into, and I'm going to try again when the next gen update comes out. But it's just something that never really clicked for me, so I didn't want to jump into I didn't want to pay full price for a game that I wasn't sure I was going to get the most out of. But this new DLC looks interesting. Edgerunners was a great show. I really enjoyed it, so I'm looking forward to seeing what CG Projekt Red have to do next. Before we finish up, I've got 4 more sort of small things I want to say about things that interested me at this show, with regards to pretty much just projects that I am interested in seeing where it goes, but also don't have a lot to say about. The Dead Cells x Castlevania sort of collab, that looks really fun and interesting. I would love to say that I'm really looking forward to it, but I've never played Dead Cells, and I know Dead Cells is notoriously very difficult. So maybe I will leave that until I try and get through the first iteration of Dead Cells. But as someone who's not really nostalgic for Castlevania but likes the idea of the crossover, and I do love the score for Castlevania, I have to say, that was something that took my interest. I'd be remiss not to mention it, but Dead Stranding 2 is an interesting one. I played the first game at least about 10 hours in. I've yet to go back and finish it, but I definitely think it's an interesting project. It's boring for a lot of people. I can definitely see why. I kind of like monotony in games sometimes, of like just everyday stuff. It was a game I kind of picked up relatively during lockdown, which is sad to say, because I know Hideo Kojima says he doesn't want to predict the future again, which is very fair when it comes to this game. But it was kind of an interesting game to play during lockdown because it was outside of the realm of like you were going outside and doing stuff, and I kind of have an affinity for those sort of mundane games like Truck Simulator and all that has you just doing regular jobs, and this is just Deliveroo Guy Simulator, realistically, Death Stranding. So I'm interested to see where the second game goes, to be honest. I'll have to finish the first game first, obviously, so that's why I didn't want to talk too much about it here. Meet Your Maker, that looks like an interesting one. It seems like a base building sort of tower defense game that allows you to have other players invade your base, kind of similar to the way in which you'd kind of structure a base in Rust, where you'd have a load of traps set up to stop people from taking your loot. There's not much I want to say about this because we only really got a CGI trailer for it, but it looks like fun. I definitely think it'd be a great thing to do with friends at some point, so yeah, I was interested in that. Finally, Returnal is coming to PC. It's not a new game, so I didn't want to add too much time to it, but I think Returnal is a fantastic title. I think it's well worth people jumping into when it comes out on PC if you haven't played it on PS5. But yeah. So yeah, that's everything at the Game Awards this year I was pretty much interested in. As I mentioned, I'm kind of a big fan of the idea of celebrating the games more than the trailers, but the trailers do obviously hook you in as well when new stuff is announced and you're like, oh, this is great. And I still have chills from the Hades 2 trailer because that was just completely out of the blue. Yeah, I have to say the Game Awards this year was actually quite good, bar the obvious random stuff that happened during the Game of the Year speech, which was strange and is still being talked about, so I don't really want to get too much into it. The whole event itself was way too long. I think that was pretty obvious, but for the most part, I think it's probably one of the best years we had for a Game Awards show in terms of announcements. God of War swept up, and so did Elden Ring, which is to be expected. I'm surprised God of War didn't actually win Game of the Year, given it won so many other prizes there that night. But yeah, fair play to Elden Ring for winning Game of the Year. That was a lot of fun to watch. I've still yet to play that properly because Souls-likes, as I mentioned, and difficult style games are never really my thing. Although I do love the world and look of Elden Ring. But yeah, overall this year, I have to say, you know, as someone who was skeptical, especially when they did the online versions of the Game Awards, I wasn't a huge fan of it. But I have to say, it's nice to have something at the end of each year that, in at least to a small capacity or to a medium capacity, celebrates the games that came out this year and kind of celebrates the developers behind them, even if a lot of them are very much skewed in favor of AAA titles. And then when those AAA titles get into random categories, they seem to win, even though there are games in those categories that are better. Just my opinion. Don't quote me on any of this. But yeah, it was a fun thing to watch. It was also amazing to get to report on it for the first time. I was in a live chat with people from Game Ranks we were doing reporting for, just kind of talking through the show and whatever, and getting hyped about new announcements. That's really fun. I love that sort of thing. That's what gaming is about. It's about having a group of friends together, getting excited about new stuff, playing that new stuff. More and more so now, probably getting disappointed by that stuff, but overall I loved it this year. I thought it was really, really good. And that's all I really want to talk about today. Those are the announcements that I really enjoyed. I'll have a few more of these sort of style sit down, just chat videos on stuff that I think I find interesting or topics that I want to talk about. As always, you know, you can subscribe to the channel if you want to keep up to date with all this stuff. Do it if you want to. I don't really care too much. Whatever floats your boat. Alongside that, you can also check out all the socials there in the links below. You can follow us over there at Gaming Sandbox _ on Twitter is the main one though if you're looking for anything like that. We're also on Instagram, and there's different content for those platforms I'm trying to work out at the moment, because Instagram is more of a visual source, whereas Twitter is more of a shit posting source. But outside of that, thank you so much for watching. If there's any announcements at the Game Awards this year, or any awards even that you were kind of surprised about, let me know in the comments down below, because whilst I may have not gotten something out of everything, I'm still always interested to know what people got the most excitement out of. I imagine Final Fantasy 16 will be one of them for sure. It's just not a series I'm very big into. But with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.